Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is May 8th, 2022, and you are now watching Real Talk with Ronnie. My name is Ronald Lynn, the host of the fastest growing political talk show in New Jersey. Here on Real Talk with Ronnie, we only engage in real talk, real news in real time. We are now broadcasting on Salem Radio via AM 970. So if you want to listen to our program on one of New York City's biggest radio stations, please go to www.am970theanswer.com every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and click on the tab that says Listen Live on the top of the page during my show's broadcast time. In addition, the video component of our show is airing live on Facebook, Rumble, and Getter right now as well. Please follow me on Facebook, Rumble, and YouTube by searching for Real Talk with Ronnie. If you're on Getter, search for my handle at Ronald Joseph Lynn. To learn more about our show, visit our show's website at www.realtalkronnie.com. realtalkronnie.com. If you want to come on our show or have a guest in mind, please let us know ASAP by emailing us at realtalkwithronnie@gmail.com. The sooner you reach out, the sooner we can get you onto our calendar. One more thing, please visit my campaign website at www.winwithlynn.us to learn more about me, my campaign, and how you can get involved. I'm running for Bergen County Commissioner, and I am the official endorsed candidate of the Bergen County Republican Party. I, along with my running mates, are facing a primary this year. So on June 7th, please vote for me and column 2. And of course, I would really appreciate any amount of donation you can muster up for my fight to save and restore Bergen County. Just click on the big donate button on my page. Thank you very much. Today is a very special day. It is Mother's Day, and I just want to take this time to wish all the mothers out there a very, very special Mother's Day. To my own mother, I wish you the happiest of Mother's Day, and thank you and love you for all that you do. My mom is probably the most important person in my life, and also, I would say, the most blessed. That's right. She is very devout in her belief in and relationship to God, and it shows. God has been extremely good to my mom and has blessed her in numerous ways throughout her life so far. In fact, since my parents touched down in the U.S. over 40 years ago from their homeland of Taiwan, God has been extremely kind and watchful over my parents, and by extension, the entire family. My parents really did achieve the all-American dream through sheer perseverance, hard work, and dedication to their creator, their adopted homeland, and family. My parents, guided largely by my mom, helped our family flourish and prosper. As children, every time my brother and I moved, it was always to a bigger house and a better neighborhood. Through my parents' hard work and dedication to our education, we always went to the best schools. We never went hungry, and we were never in need. God has truly been good to my mom and to our family. In fact, the biggest blessing my mom ever received from God came on December 21st, 1981. It was the day she gave birth to me. For God so loved my mom that he gave her the greatest gift that she could have ever hoped for. I am indeed the greatest gift and the best son my mom could ever ask for. And that is why we know that my mom is truly blessed. In all seriousness, though, I love you, Mom, and happy Mother's Day. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't extend a happy Mother's Day to my lovely wife on behalf of my 2 young boys. My 2 boys, Donald, age 22 months, and Ronald Jr., age 4 months, are currently too young to wish their mother a happy Mother's Day, so I will do it for them. A big thank you to my wife for being a wonderful mom and for holding down the fort these past few years. She's endured some trying times, and she is truly an angel for putting up with all that life has thrown her way. The boys and I love you with all our hearts. All right, what a big week in our country, politically speaking. In the great state of Ohio, J.D. Vance has emerged as the big winner in a contentious field to become the Republican nominee for U.S. Senate from Ohio. The Republican nominee is widely seen as the presumptive winner of the U.S. Senate seat, being vacated by current Republican U.S. Senator Rob Portman. Ohio's Republican primary for the U.S. Senate made national news and was widely followed by the political and media class throughout the country due to the contentious nature of it. It literally almost got down to a brawl between 2 of the candidates during a town hall. I believe Josh Mandel, former Ohio State treasurer, and Mike Gibbons, an investment banker, nearly came to blows after a recent town hall. It definitely got very ugly as the crowded field, which included Jane Timken, the former Ohio GOP chairperson, and the endorsed preference of current U.S. Senator Portman, as well as State Senator Matt Dolan, all fought for President Trump's coveted endorsement. Finally, when all was said and done, President Trump eventually endorsed author J.D. Vance, and once again, a Trump endorsement proves golden for the endorsed candidate, while at the same time becoming a kiss of death for the unendorsed candidates. J.D. Vance went on to win the primary by 8 percentage points. This particular race had national implications as well, because it became a test of Trump's political weight and status as kingmaker, especially as he repeatedly teases a run for 2024. Had J.D. Vance not won, it may have signaled the eroding influence of Trump's political power and sway, but that didn't happen. And once again, this just proves that President Trump is more powerful than ever and is undeniably the most powerful and influential voice within the Republican Party today. In fact, even Biden and his administration are surprised by Trump's influence over the party. But you know what? I find that kind of odd. Why would a guy who won the presidential race with the highest vote total in the history of our country be worried about Trump? 81 million votes, right? Basement Joe received 81 million votes without campaigning. So what's he worried about? Another major news story that broke this week was the Supreme leak at the Supreme Court. In probably the biggest breach of trust and sanctity in our nation's highest court of the land, a draft decision written by Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito on the apparent and impending reversal of Roe v. Wade was leaked. I cannot stress how horrendous and heinous this repulsive breach of trust represents for our country and ultimately the rule of law. Whether or not you are in the legal profession, this ought to alarm you and piss you off. Since the founding of our country's legal system, the ability of our judicial officers to deliberate in private, in peace, and without the undue influence of a mob was absolutely paramount. What just happened this week was an abomination. And to happen to the highest court of the land is truly a wake-up call that the bedrock of our society, democracy, and country is literally at stake. The perpetrator of this leak must be brought to justice and made an example of. This cannot and must not happen again. Let's be very clear. This was done with the express and intentional purpose of trying to use the power of the mob and the biased and corrupt media to intimidate, manipulate, and coerce the justices into submission in the face of an apparent defeat for all those on the left who love and welcome abortions. And let me be very clear. If this draft decision ultimately becomes the rule of the land, the liberals will absolutely make abortions the number one main issue in this year's election. That's it. Abortion, abortion, abortion. The media will no longer talk about war in Ukraine, our massive inflation, or Joe Biden's massive failures on almost every single front. Not that they were talking about them anyway. But now I predict the media will all be singularly focused on abortion and women's reproductive rights. Funny how all of a sudden, everyone on the left can now define what a woman is. But let's talk about the issue of abortion for a bit. I do believe this is a very serious subject. Now, for me personally speaking, I am pro-life, and I honestly and sincerely believe that life begins at conception. And I do feel that this is an extremely important topic to be speaking about, especially on Mother's Day. Now, I know for a fact that I can never, ever be a mother or a birthing person, no matter what brand of Kool-Aid the left tries to force down my throat. All right? I am a male, not a female, and I can never, ever give birth to a child. No biological male ever can. So please, let's stop this birthing person nonsense, and let's restore the honor, dignity, and gift of being a mother back to his rightful owner, the billions of mothers and women out there who have the ability to become mothers. But speaking of abortions, I read a very interesting poll the other day. Over 70% of people in the United States believe in some sort of limitation to abortions, and only about 12% of people believe in no limit at all, which means free and willful abortions up until the time of birth, which I believe is the law here in New Jersey. It's truly disgusting. That to me, and I would say most sane and reasonable people, would equate to murder. You know, being the father of 2 boys now and witnessing the process of pregnancy, listening and watching the sonograms and ultrasounds, and hearing the heartbeat of my babies, seeing them kick and move around in their mother's womb. How in God's name can you possibly abort a healthy, normal God's gift like that? And up until the time of birth, that's ludicrous, insane, and evil. It's murder, pure and simple. You are talking about taking a full term baby and literally killing it. Heck, at 6 months, a fetus is nearly fully developed and can survive outside a mother's body. These fetuses that later become infants when born are the purest, most innocent, and helpless in our world. They should be protected and cherished at all costs, not stripped of rights and nonchalantly murdered at a whim. Now, speaking of women and moms on this special Mother's Day show, on our fantastic show tonight, we welcome Dr. Marina Hofman. Dr. Hofman is the author of the award-winning book and video series, Women in the Bible, Small Group Bible Study. She is a professor at Palm Beach Atlantic University, president of Moms for America in Palm Beach County, and a homeschool mom of a 3-year-old daughter. In 2014, Dr. Hofman survived a horrific and traumatic head-on collision where she was on the brink of death. However, God had other plans for her, and through her near-death experience, her testimony has touched and changed the lives of countless people. Dr. Hofman is a regular media guest, providing biblical perspectives on current issues, women's issues, and parenting. She has appeared on hundreds of radio shows and podcasts, such as the Mike Gallagher Show, the Dinesh D'Souza Podcast, and the Todd Starnes Show. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Dr. Marina Hofman onto Real Talk with Ronnie.
Maybe you taste different. Hold up, baby.
Dr. Hofman, thank you for coming on Real Talk with Ronnie. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you on our great show.
It's great to be with you, Ronnie. Thank you.
Sure. Now, Dr. Hofman, I read from your bio, from your website, and you've got a pretty inspiring story, right? But before we get to all that, I just want to talk to you about your background. Where are you from? What was your childhood like? Please tell us everything there is to know about Dr. Hofman.
Okay, well, I am from Canada. I grew up in the Toronto area my whole life. And then 7 years ago, I moved with my husband down to South Florida, which is so nice and warm all year round. So it's great for us. And I have a daughter who's 3, and I'm a homeschool mom. And I started a community group called Moms for America. So Ronnie, since having a child, that my life has changed. I know you can relate to that. And I care so much now about our future that I've become a community organizer, and who knows what the future holds, but I'm on a mission to encourage moms to stay strong and stand up for their rights in America.
Okay, great. Now, before we get to the testimony, let me ask you, why did you decide to move from Canada to sunny Florida? Is it just because of the weather?
Well, my husband said I could work at any university I wanted to, Ronnie, but it had to be on the ocean in a warm climate. I spent days researching, and there was one answer: Palm Beach Atlantic University. I applied, and thank goodness I got a job.
All right, great. Okay, so Dr. Hofman, you are the author of the award-winning book and video series, Women in the Bible, Small Group Bible Study. Beyond that, you're also a professor at Palm Beach Atlantic University. You're the president of Moms for America in Palm Beach County, and you are the homeschool mom of a 3-year-old daughter. So please talk to us about your book.
Sure. I was so inspired by women in the Bible. They have incredible stories, but Ronnie, sometimes we don't hear about it, right? Even churchgoers, we don't necessarily hear sermons about women in the Bible. But as I dived into their story after a massive car crash with all kinds of limitations and injuries I incurred, these women inspired me. And then COVID hits, and I reread their stories, and they inspire me so much more because they're bold, they did courageous things, and yet they didn't have any kind of high-level social status. They didn't have all kinds of power and influence, but they simply said yes to God. And Ronnie, I thought that's something I can do. And let me take these stories and put them in a format where women are challenged to think about it and answer questions and reflect on how these stories can inspire their life as well.
Okay. And I think this is such a fitting show for today because, we are airing on Mother's Day. So your book specifically talks about women in the Bible, right? And why is it important for us to know about moms and women in the Bible?
Well, I think as women, we need role models. I grew up knowing some of the famous men, Moses, David, Jesus. They are great, but I never pictured myself being the kind of leader that has a victory by throwing stones at a giant. So these models for me and many other women are really stories that connect with us in our lives. And I think for children as well, we want our young girls to believe in the potential God has for their life. And you, Ronnie, and your boys, you're going to teach them to grow up to respect girls. An important part of that is to say God loves women and God respects them. And so if we want to reflect God and follow him, then we need to respect women as well. So I think there's stories that need to be told.
Okay. That being said, who would you say is your favorite mother from the Bible? Let me ask this in a two-part question, all right? Who is your favorite mother in the Old Testament and your favorite one in the New Testament?
Okay, I will start with Old Testament Hannah, and she means a lot to me because I can relate to her struggle with infertility. And here's a woman who has a husband, she can't have a child. Her husband has another wife, and the Bible says describes all her children, all the boys and all the girls. So you can imagine the pain of this woman who lives with another woman and all her children, daily reminders. And there's a point in the story where she goes and pours out her heart to God and commits to raise her son for the Lord if God will give her a son. And I love this story not only because she's bold and she goes to God and asks in a real prayer, but after she prays, the Bible says she stood up and she ate and drank and went on her way, and her face was no longer downcast. And what an encouragement to me in the midst of our struggles and challenges and sorrow to be able to hold our head up high and trust that God has our way in his hands and will provide a way forward and answer our prayers.
Okay, great. Thank you. So Hannah is your pick for the Old Testament. Do you have a pick for the New Testament?
Yes, of course, I need to go with Mary, the mother of Jesus. Who could be more inspiring? And Ronnie, before I wrote this study, I knew about Mary's life, but I always felt she was very other and very holy and very separate from me. And there is a sense of holiness and righteousness to Mary, but there's also a practical way we can relate to her. Her life is totally changed when an angel tells her she's going to have the Son of God. And what does she do? She simply says yes to God. And she has no idea the challenges ahead. She has no idea what the future holds, but she's willing to trust that she's heard from God and to move forward. And in the last 2 years, especially, I would say that example spoke powerfully to me because we don't always know the challenges and we don't sometimes feel that we can make a difference, but we can say yes to God's call, even if that's as simple as standing up for our rights and freedoms here in America because we care about others and we care about our children's future.
Okay. Now, what stands out to you about Hannah now that you are also a mother?
Yeah, really her commitment to pray and then to trust God and to move forward in faith. And I think that is something that Hannah did as a woman before she was a mom, and then she kept doing it. And if you look at her son, Samuel, some of your listeners will know he was a lot like his mom. He was a man of prayer and he was a man of influence in the nation. And of course, as a mom now myself, I'm trying to commit everything to prayer and trying to trust God day by day. And I think it's really important when we have little kids. My daughter's only 3, that we don't wear the heaviness of the news on our face every day. So we have to do the impossible, right? We have to read the news, hear about it, and then play with our children on the floor doing a puzzle or arts and crafts. And that's one of the hardest challenges I faced in life. But again, Hannah's a huge inspiration because she was able to move forward and trust God, even though she had a lot of pain and sorrow.
Right. And it kind of seems like, Hannah, she lived counterculturally, right?
She did. Her story comes right after the judges. And the Bible says, everyone's kind of doing what they thought was right in their own eyes. And Ronnie, isn't that a statement of some of society today? Kind of lost, kind of unsure, not strong leadership in some groups, and everyone doing what they feel is right. And I think there's been a movement away from absolute sense of morality, and it's confusing and it's a hard time. So how incredible that in the midst of that, Hannah is an example of faithfulness, and even her husband too, regularly worshiping the Lord. So I think that the reminder that we can be faithful in a time when there's chaos around us and the impact of our life and the potential for our legacy is great, even if it is living counterculturally, and even if it is a challenge.
Okay. Now, as a professor right now, which courses do you teach?
I just finished a course on the Torah and one on Christian values and biblical faith. We're in our last week of the semester.
When it comes to the Torah and the Bible, right? Those are almost the same book, right? Well, the Torah is in the Old Testament, and the New Testament is the second component of the Christian Bible, right? So, how do you sort of reconcile the differences between Jews and Christians?
Right. Well, the Jewish story really ends with an expectation of the Messiah and a sense that the prophets have foretold of a day coming where there will be a great reckoning and the righteous will be judged and the wicked will be judged. And for Christians with the New Testament, we believe that Jesus is the coming of that promised day. And through Jesus, we have salvation once and for all, which abolished the need for us to sacrifice animals. But there's also still a sense for Christians that we look forward, just like Jews, for the final day when all will be made right and God's kingdom will reign on earth.
Okay, so I guess, not to oversimplify the differences between Jews and Christians, but I guess the main difference is that Jews believe that the Messiah will come, right? That the Messiah has not come yet, whereas Christians believe that the Messiah has already come, and his name is Jesus.
Yes.
Okay. Do you think this will ever be reconciled between Jews and Christians at any point, or do you think this will be the ongoing debate?
Well, Ronnie, I think generally the ongoing debate, but I think many Christians have witnessed to Jews and said, these are the signs, these are the reasons why I believe Jesus is the fulfillment of your scripture, right? We share the Old Testament, but it is the Jewish Bible really that we have borrowed from and we interpret. So I believe that Jesus fulfills the sense of expectation for a Messiah in the Old Testament. And I think many other Jews around the world would agree.
Mm-hmm. Now, for the Jewish people, right? What is it about Jesus that makes them feel that he does not fulfill that prophecy?
Well, Ronnie, that's a big question, and I think there's many different answers, but I think the reasons go way back all the way to the time where Jesus lived, that they simply didn't believe that this person would come in the manner that they expected, and they certainly want military victory and freedom from the shackles of all the nations that have bound them and imprisoned them for so long. And still, there's a sense where the Jews have so many enemies around the world, and so I think there's a great sense and hope for a military leader and military success, but that is not the person Jesus came. He came meek and mild and with a different view of freedom from the inside out.
So to make a long story short, Jews don't believe in Jesus as the fulfillment of the prophecy because he, at that point, wasn't the type of Messiah that they had expected. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I guess, this is an ongoing debate and we'll see what happens. But let's get back to your book, right? So Hannah is the woman is the mother that you admire the most. Is there a particular woman, and it doesn't have to be a mother, a female who you admire the most in the Bible?
Sure. I love the story of the midwives. They were not mothers, but they helped bring children into the world and help mothers. And they're just doing their job, Ronnie, in Egypt. And all of a sudden, the Pharaoh calls them and says, from now on, instead of bringing healthy boys into the world, I want you to kill them all. And this is the time of Moses, right? So what a situation to be in. They have to make a choice. And do they go back to their job the next day and keep bringing about life? Or do they follow this horrible decree that really stands against everything they represent? Well, these midwives decide that they will not listen to the Pharaoh and they'll stand for life and they'll keep bringing babies into the world. And they find a clever way to lie to the king of Egypt and they don't lose their life. So it's an incredible story of courage in the face of the threat of death. And yet at the same time, what inspires me, Ronnie, is that they do something so ordinary. All they do is continue to work. They continue to do their job. And I love it because it relates to so many of us where God calls us to do the simple things in the day-to-day. And through those ordinary acts of standing for freedom, God brings about something extraordinary.
Okay. Now, I understand that today's segment is a Mother's Day, show, but not to take the glory away from mothers, but I must ask, who is your favorite man from the Bible?
Oh, wow. That is a question I have not been asked. I would say that Samuel. I study Samuel a lot, and not only because he's Hannah's son, but because he transitions the people from a time of lawlessness to prepare them for the kingship. And I think there's a sense that his life is reflective of our job on earth today, to take the craziness all around us, to bring order, to bring leadership, to depend on God, and to pave the way for a king. Of course, Samuel paves the way for King David eventually, but our preparation is for Jesus Christ as king of the earth in his
Okay.
coming day.
So, favorite man from the Bible, Samuel. Okay, great. Now, now we're gonna get to the good part of this interview, right? The juicy part, which is about the traumatic event that pretty much changed your life, that pretty much, I want to say, spawned you to write this book, right? So, can you please tell us, Dr. Hoffman, what exactly happened in 2014?
Yeah, my husband and I were driving home from a family event. It was a cold February day, but no ice on the ground. We're just driving along the highway, and it narrows down to a section under construction where each lane is side by side. And in a split second, the car coming toward us at about 70 miles an hour on the highway decides not to turn. And we don't know what happened. Unfortunately, he passed away that day, but you can imagine the devastation to our bodies of an impact of 140 miles an hour. And my husband's body was crushed when the car drove into his side. But my life was saved for a variety of reasons. At the last second, my husband threw his body on top of me and took all the airbags and held my head. And it turned out that I had a brain injury. So his hand holding my head was probably what the difference between being a vegetable and living. And his body took the airbags. And Ronnie, I had 4 lacerations to my bowel, so I should have died instantly from the airbags. So my husband saved my life in 2 ways. A firefighter and EMT workers behind us ran to the car. I was trying to get out. They wouldn't let me move. So they saved my life because I didn't go completely septic. I get to the hospital. The surgeon is an older lady who's done by hand surgery in the past. And she takes a look at me and knows that I'm slowly dying in front of her. She just rolls me into the OR and starts operating. 10 hours later, she saves my life. So, Ronnie, it's a dramatic story of God saving my life in many ways. But within the days that followed, I realized something was very wrong. Nothing made sense to me. I had no memories. All I did is stutter. I couldn't really speak. And I realized that I had a brain injury that was very significant, severe PTSD, severe anxiety, all kinds of troubles. And I would have to move forward and find a purpose for life again.
Wow, that is such a it's a pretty scary scenario, right? So I got so many questions, right? So was it ever determined why this guy who was driving on the other side of the road like didn't stop, didn't brake?
No, it wasn't, Ronnie. The family decided they didn't want to bury him, so they just there was no time for an investigation. The family acted quick, so we don't know what happened, and he didn't make it, so he couldn't testify. I can only say that he wasn't on his phone because his phone was in his backpack. So, but it was just something they think maybe he had a brain aneurysm.
Oh wow. So the other party was driving what type of vehicle again?
A small mid-size vehicle. We had a large Jeep. We had the old box Commander. I don't know if you remember them, but that titanium body saved our lives because eventually it stopped the car. And the titanium in front of my husband's driver seat was barely bent. So thank goodness for titanium. Otherwise, our own Jeep engine would have been completely in his lap and would have crushed him to death.
Right. And was there a reason that your husband couldn't stop the car also, or?
No, it was 3 seconds.
Oh,
The car was right in front of us. We were in a bend in the road. His head went down, and within a split second, there was nowhere to go. Also, Ronnie, we were going over a bridge, so there was not even a shoulder to drive on.
and it's pretty miraculous, right? Because you mentioned, I read from your testimony that the driver in front of you and the driver in back of you. I think the driver in front of you happened to be a firefighter, and the driver in back of you was an EMT worker, right? So immediately after this crash happened, the drivers from the front of you and from the back of you jumped out of their car and started to help you.
Yeah, I had a brain injury, so I still have no memories, but they told my husband remembers that I was yelling because I thought my body was on fire. I was in so much pain and I was trying to get out of the car, and they bear hugged me to the seat, and the firefighter held my legs down. And this is 48 minutes in frigid cold air until the ambulance came. But if I had stood up, I would have died on the spot. The surgeon says I never would have been able to stand. So they truly saved my life. And thank goodness they were skilled and could figure out what was going on.
Right. Wait, if you had stood up, why would you have died?
The bile in my bowels would have poured out and I would have been poisoned to death by my own
Oh my God.
innards. Yeah. Pretty
Wow.
gross.
So when you said you have 4 lacerations in your bowels, like, what do you mean? Like your stomach was cut open in 4 different areas?
Yes. So everything I had eaten in the last, I guess, 2 days was slowly seeping out into my body and poisoning me. So by the time I got to the hospital, which was a whole hour and a half later, by the time everything was done, the surgeon realized that I was already well on the way to near dead.
Wow. But what caused the lacerations?
Actually, the seatbelt. So if you know the Commander, it's a big box car. My frame was smaller than the seat, and the seatbelt itself crushed me across my waist.
Oh my gosh. So what kind of injuries did your husband sustain?
He had so many. The first was he broke his right side rib by leaning over to save me. Then he broke 7 ribs on the other side. He broke his right ankle, but it fixed on its own. His left ankle was shattered. It's all titanium now. And his engine did come very close to him. So his engine pushed his leg out of the socket at the back. So he has a left side titanium hip. I would say that's about all. He had a punctured lung. I think that covers it.
Okay, well, that's it, right?
That's it.
But your husband can still walk and everything, right?
He can. He works really hard, and he was in good shape when the accident happened, thankfully. But every step he takes is painful.
Okay. What does your husband do now?
He owns a Christian publishing company that we run here from Florida.
Okay, great. Now, talk to us about the immediate aftermath of the accident. Now, obviously, you were very grateful and happy that that you actually survived, right? How long did the whole process take for you to kind of get back to normal?
Yeah, I don't have any memories for the first 3 days except for the vague sense that I thought I was utterly alone and I thought my husband had died. So those were very dark days. But eventually my family came and I had a lot of support and I slowly recovered. I slowly got my life back. It was really step by step. It was praying every morning that God would give me the strength and the purpose and a reason to get out of bed and take care of myself and practice talking and try to find order and some semblance of a normal life. But it was about 2 years before I genuinely smiled. So you can tell that was a long road of recovery in terms of depression. I had to relearn everything as well because with my amnesia, my memories have not come back.
Wow. So which memories haven't come back? Like the ones from your childhood or the ones from the accident, or which ones?
Really almost everything, but sometimes a random thought will come in my head. But I remember almost nothing from before the accident. I don't remember the accident. And even the year after our accident is still very vague and uncertain. And I hesitate to even talk about it because pretty much everything I've said, my husband looks at me and says, that's not at all a picture of reality. So really my memories start about 5 years ago.
Wow. So you have no recollection of your childhood, from going to high school, middle school, college, your PhD degree and master's, everything? Nothing.
No, very little. I remember a couple seconds of my wedding. I guess that must have impacted me a lot. And I have little random memories, but really, no, I don't. Most of my life is just reflecting on the last 5 to 6 years.
Wow. So I mean, did you remember the family members who came to your hospital bedside, like your parents or sisters or brothers or siblings or whatever?
I did, and I remembered them for sure. But I had many friends calling me and emailing me and asking me how I was. And I didn't even recognize their name and I didn't recognize their face at all. And I remember some people, when I first entered into public again, they would want to give me hugs and holding me close. And I was so repulsed by all these strangers wanting to touch me. And I remember it was hard and I had to be patient because they had no idea that I didn't remember who they were.
Right. So maybe that should be like a public disclaimer
Yeah.
that you put out there, right? Like don't remember you. So if you try to hug me and I don't hug back, that's why.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it made me really isolated because I didn't want to be in public at all. And anyone who's gone through trauma or loss, it's very hard to go back into society and pretend everything is fine, when you're carrying a sense of loss and heartbreak.
Right. Now, is there any hope in the future the memory that you've lost may come back or
Well, doctor said that, but Ronnie, it's now been 8 years, so I don't really think about it much, and it's fine. I've moved on. I have so many memories now, and anyone who has a little child knows that you make so many memories every day with a 3-year-old and with cameras right in our hands all the time. So I'm thankful for these years, and I don't really think about the past.
okay. So let's talk about your daughter, little Willow, right? Willow Grace
Yeah.
Hannah. After your accident, I believe you were told by doctors that you would not be able to bear children.
That's right. I worked so hard to get better, and I was very diligent in my diet and my exercise. And yet, 2 years after the accident, the doctors told me my chance was about 0.0001. And you can imagine how depressing it was to look at that number and think, how can I ever move forward? I mean, this person hits me and now I can't have a child, which had been a dream of mine. So it was hard to accept the reality. And, Ronnie, I could only just take it to God in prayer. But by, I guess, a miracle, several months later, I did get pregnant. And there we have Willow.
Wow, that is truly a miracle, right? And it's so inspiring. And this
Yeah,
was
Ronnie, I'll share with you that another level of miracle that I didn't expect is really what happened when I was pregnant. So she was a wild child. She kicked me 18 hours a day. I learned to sleep while getting kicked. But by my 6 months of pregnancy, I had no scar tissue left, even in the hardest to reach places behind my ribs. So that was one miracle that I felt was incredible because I had no more hope from a physiotherapist that I would ever improve. And the other thing, Ronnie, is that I was filled with joy. And everyone said, it's just the pregnancy hormones, and that's okay. I was thankful for every day that I felt positive and my depression was gone. And then I had Willow, and I still wasn't depressed. And 2 or 3 days later, I asked the doctors, how come I'm not depressed yet and anxious? And they said, oh, maybe birthing hormones. Well, 6 months passes, Ronnie, and it's Christmas time. And I finally decide just to be thankful because somehow through my pregnancy and through Willow, I was delivered, we could say, from depression and anxiety and PTSD. So her life is a miracle in every sense.
that's really remarkable because most of the time women get depressed as a result of their pregnancy, right? And that's a very natural process. But in your case, the pregnancy induced all this depression and PTSD to actually go away, right?
Yeah, it's incredible and I can't explain it. I felt like the happiest person on earth. And it was just a testimony, if I can share, Ronnie, of how God sometimes does in our lives more than we can ask or imagine. Because I never prayed for that and I never even imagined that I would be finally free from all those hardships after 5 years.
All right. Now, do you and your husband have any plans for more children?
Well, I don't think so. I will be thankful for Willow, and she's the most active girl I ever see on the playground and everywhere else. She rarely sleeps even 6 hours a day. So I feel like I've got my hands full, Ronnie.
Well, rarely 6 hours a day. So she doesn't take naps.
Oh no. She is up at 7 and I'll put her to bed at 9 or 10 and still at midnight she'll be wide awake. I don't know how. I don't know.
Sounds a lot like my little boy.
Oh dear. It's
Perhaps in
hard.
the future we could set up like a play date.
Yes, let them talk to each other while we sleep and get work done.
Right. All right. Now, so back to your book. Can you talk about how studying women and mothers in the Bible help us become better people?
Yeah, I think we first of all need a rounded view of scripture. And there are so many sermons and podcasts on men in the Bible. So I think it's important that we also see the side of leadership and faithfulness and influence on the family, but also influence on the nature and influence on history that we find in women in the Bible. And I think their stories have so much to offer, such great examples of faithfulness. And perhaps, Ronnie, what I love the most about these women is there's ordinary, and that's why we can relate to them. There's nothing special about Hannah. She was just a person who was faithful and who prayed and who trusted God. And I think some of those simple lessons are one that relate to us all. So we miss out when we don't know the stories of these women.
So, Dr. Hoffman, if you had to sum it up, what would you like our listeners to take away from today's episode?
I think the idea of being willing to say yes to God and willing to do the ordinary things in life that can be so hard. And I think, Ronnie, of a story I shared with you. Friday, my daughter and I went to the dentist, and we're living here in Florida, and people would think we are finally free. Well, I had a huge fight to be seen without a mask, including my 3-year-old. And finally, they told us they would see us. The office is empty. The administrative assistants are behind thick plexiglass, and yet they want us to wait in the hall where there are no chairs, by the way. And they made us wait 40 minutes, although there was no one before us. So it's moments like those that seem ordinary, right? Just not wear a mask. That's ordinary. It's what we've done all along until the last 2 years. And yet there's something extraordinary in it because it took bravery and it took a lot of patience and humility, I would say, for my daughter and I to do it. But I'll say this, Ronnie, there were a couple of the dental hygienists that beamed such big smiles at us and just pushed conversation. I thought they just wanted to talk to us. And I felt at least that maybe they were encouraged by our bravery. And if nothing else, Ronnie, it set an example for my daughter that I would stand up for her and I would never let someone treat her in a way that I didn't think was to her benefit. And I would never allow that. So she sees these acts of bravery and people see it all the time in our lives. So that would be my encouragement, to find the strength in God to do the ordinary things that make an impact far beyond what we can imagine to other people we don't even know, but who are watching us and are deeply inspired by our small acts of bravery.
But I mean, I find this interesting. You live in Florida, and Florida is supposed to be one of the most open states in the country, yet they still enforce the mask rules, huh?
Yes, and there was a church not that long ago, a few weeks ago, we wanted to go to an event and they insisted everyone has masks. So it was not worth it for us. We would not go. So, it's still around us, Ronnie. People have the choice. And I just want to say how sad that people will choose these repressive demands on others. It's not that people can't wear a mask, but it's that we're not given the option of choosing it for ourselves. And I know my daughter, she's extremely extroverted. She reads people's emotions on their face. There is nothing beneficial to putting her in a mask or to covering myself so that she can't see her mama. So for me, it's a choice I make, and how sad that other people want to take those freedoms away from us.
Right. Now, what are your thoughts on the current political climate in Florida, in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think we're very blessed to have Ron DeSantis. I mean, he's fighting for what the people want. And the people in Florida have spoken clearly that we don't want mask mandates. We don't want vaccine mandates. We don't want to be restricted in how we can monitor what's happening in the education system. And we don't want other adults talking to our children about sexual education when they're entering kindergarten and grade 1 and grade 2. So he's listened to the parents, he's listened to the people of Florida, and he represents us. And honey, the pushback he's getting. And it shows, I think, a picture of where we are at in America. There are leaders who want to fight for our freedoms. And sadly, there is so much pushback. So what can we do, Ronnie? Whether we live in Florida, and this is absolutely a message to myself, every day I have to go out there and support Ron DeSantis and everyone else who stands for freedom. And I think that all of us Americans, if we want freedom in our country, we can no longer say, you know what, this politician is saying something crazy that will never happen. Ronnie, so many of us saw and listened to someone who said something crazy, and the next thing we knew, it was a mandate across the United States of America. So we need to stand for our freedoms and support practically in every way we can those who are a voice for us in fighting for freedom.
Okay. Do you believe that Ron DeSantis will run for president in 2024?
You know, every Floridian says the same thing. I hope not, because what will we do without him?
Okay, no, but if Ron DeSantis runs and if Trump runs, who do you think would win?
Oh, I do not think that will happen. And Trump, without a doubt, I don't think Ron DeSantis will put himself up against Trump.
Right. Yeah, I think that's pretty true. You currently homeschool little Willow, right? Do you plan on homeschooling her for the duration of her primary school years, or?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's the best option for our family. My heart goes out to people who have children who do not like to learn, who are not disciplined, parents that feel unable to. But I'm blessed. I'm a teacher by nature and profession, and my little one loves to learn. But Ronnie, if I can speak if I can share one point, it would be try to turn off the electronics and the television in your house, because it's amazing how children love to learn and engage in the world around them and pick up a book to read when there is not the option of electronics. And in our home, at least 3 or 4 days a week, at least, are called TV free days. And those are the best days because she doesn't even ask for the television. She knows that she needs to find puzzles to do and crafts to do. And yesterday we went outside and planted. But it's very hard if you have children addicted to electronics. You know, Ronnie, if there's a will, there's a way. And I think families are starting to think well beyond what was a normal pattern before, including grandparents, including neighbors and friends, and coming together to say, how can we control our child's education and not leave it up to a public system that for many people, they're not even allowed to cross into the rooms and see what's going on.
Right. That being said, what does the Hoffman family do for fun? Like, what do you guys do on a typical, weekend?
You know, my funnest times are doing things with Willow. So we grew caterpillars and butterflies for a month and a half. It was a lot of work. We're done with that. We made 12 butterflies, and she released them. And now we're doing planting, some from seeds, so we just do things like that. Yesterday, we traced her body and colored in the body parts. So we just do a lot of fun things. I don't use a curriculum, Ronnie. I think every day, how can I engage her with God and God's world? So I can keep it simple. She's only 3.
Yeah. Great. Now tell us about your study, because you have these 8 studies, right? It's a free video series. What can the readers expect from this study?
Thank you. So my videos online are very personal. I just talk heart to heart with people, but like we're doing today, Ronnie, just show how I've been personally inspired by these women and their stories. But my Bible study is very much in the Bible. I don't talk about myself at all, and it's less personal, but I show from scripture. I walk them through verse by verse, and then I ask them questions that I hope lead to them thinking of how their lives connect to these stories. And I encourage them to develop their character, that they can do incredible things. All they have to do is say yes to God and humbly follow what God's plan is for their life.
How can listeners get your Bible study and connect with you?
Sure, they can go to my website for the free video series. It's womeninthebible.info, and my book is on Amazon. It's about $13.
Okay, great. What do you want readers of your book to take away?
That they can simply say yes to God and make a big difference, and that they can move forward no matter their circumstance, no matter what obstacles lie before them and limitations they face. With God, all things are possible. And the beauty of following God is the weaker that we are, the greater God's strength is manifest in our life. So if you're strong, run with it. But if you have weaknesses and limitations like me, trust that God will be all the more glorified.
Great. Do you think that America, too, will get through the struggles that we currently face today?
I do. And my faith in America increases the more I develop my Moms for America group. I've met incredible women doing amazing things, and yet they're ordinary at the same time, Ronnie. And I really have found for myself in the last 3 months that surrounding myself with like-minded women who believe in faith, family, and freedom, and encouraging them and just spending time together, listening and hearing their heart, is given me such a faith in America that I've never had before.
Dr. Marina Hofman, author of Women in the Bible Small Group Bible Study, professor at Palm Beach Atlantic University, and president of Moms for America in Palm Beach County. Thank you so much for your appearance today on Real Talk with Ronnie. Your story is truly very, very well. Is very scary, but it's also very, very inspirational. So thank you for that.
Thanks for letting me share, Ronnie, and God bless your listeners. I hope some of them will connect with me.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Hofman. If you want to learn more about Dr. Hofman, about her background, her testimony, if you want to check out her book and check out all that she is doing, check out her website, www.womeninthebible.info, womeninthebible.info. Thank you, Dr. Hofman, for coming on our show, and we hope to speak with you very, very soon.
Thank you.
Bitter. Maybe you taste different.